Tsugaru Shinichi exists in an era where monsters, metahumans, and flying pigs are as real as a Kardashian's BBL. Tsugaru is popularly known as the Oni Slayer for his consistent wins in setup matches where he kills monsters to entertain a lousy crowd and earn some money. One day, he gets an interesting deal from a Walking Dead lady to travel the world as a team of 2.5 because his employer, Aya, happens to have just a head. Although Tsugaru looks like a normal guy, the mark on his skin distinguishes him from every human, so much so that his employers cluster him as one of the monsters. One day, after another pathetic show at the theater, Tsugaru notices an imposter among us when he finds a silly maid discreetly searching his room at an ungodly hour. One peculiar feature that draws is the birdcage in her possession, so he tries to reach for it, and in a turn of events, Goody Two-Shoes become the assassin Mulan. When women from the 19th century only had the ability to unleash babies from their undergarments, they unleashed a loaded gun aimed and ready to fire. Soon the two go at it like how couples fight over paying child support. In the end, Goody Two-Shoes has no choice but to submit to Tsugaru's amazing skill, saying her barbaric attack was a reflex response to touching the birdcage. She reminds him that he's a careless mix of human cells and Oni. She tells him that he has little time to live. His Oni side will soon consume him if he continuously uses his powers on the ring. Tsugaru's response to this is a blank dead stare as he wonders how kitchen duties got access to such information. She further tells him that she's got a deal for him, revealing the birdcage carries the Walking Dead Aya, an immortal crackhead who wishes to attain death after living for 947 years. Turns out the rest of Aya's body was severed by an Oni hybrid creature, therefore hindering her regenerative abilities. The only description Aya has of her murderer is an advanced foreigner who wields a cane stick. And just like Aya, Tsugaru wishes to attain death. But for some reason, he fought against Goody Two-Shoes when she could have easily killed him. Only then is Tsugaru's psychotic motive revealed, as he wishes to be consumed by Oni in the theater, so he can snap the throats of the pathetic audience he entertained for years. He reveals to have no intentions of having Aya's head on a platter of gold. Matter of fact, he indulges her to get her body parts back, also revealing that the man responsible for her predicament is the same old geezer who took his humanity. He presents her with a more interesting bargain, one where she uses her brains from living centuries to find the old geezer while Tsugaru offers his body to do the thrusting and the dirty work, if you know what I mean. Both parties seal their deal by the extension of Tsugaru's life form. He tastes Aya's body fluid, and just like that, the man swallows that icky goo, not considering Aya's use of mouthwash for 947 years. To be fair, I'd kill Thanos to get a taste of them lippies too. A year later, somewhere in Europe, Castlevania, Raoul and his vampire father, Lord Goddard, are hunting in the woods. But it turns out there's more to what meets the eye as these hunters have become the hunted. They return home to find Lady Hannah's body drenched in blood, seemingly killed by a vampire hunter, and this raises an uproar in the county. Lord Goddard publicly expresses his resentment over the incident and decides to hire the monster detectives, now in the persons of Tsugaru, who has attained a renowned title as the Cage User, and Aya, the floating head that seems too good to be true, even with the vampire family as the audience. She introduces herself as the star of the show and the detective to handle the case, while Tsugaru is her measly assistant. Aya's job begins by asking important questions about the family, as it turns out they are a family of 4. 3 children and 1 father, excluding the unalived Hannah, Alfred the busboy, and Giselle the side chick. Other than that, Aya discerns that Hannah was killed in her sleep, peacefully, and with a silver stake, as there are no signs of struggling on the murder scene. Having these pieces together, the top priority for the investigation is Hannah's sudden sleep despite being a sensitive vampire, how the murderer infiltrated the vampire's home at nighttime when they are strongest, why the murderer left a holy water bottle at the scene, how he knew the location of Hannah's room, as well the storage room where the stake was hidden, and more importantly, why the murderer returned the stake to the storage room after the murder. For the good part, the vampire family treats the guests to dinner. and Tsugaru is more thrilled that he gets actual food, and not a blood meal like the Fang people. Turns out from the pact made as human allies, they vowed to dine on animal blood. Yet seeing how Tsugaru and his companions carry themselves, the Fang family worry that they have hired tyrants and con artists in the guise of being detectives. Coming to their rescue is Aya, who gives a crazy accurate analysis of their carriage rider's lifestyle just by his features and worn-out clothes. This feat alone saves their reputation just before Aya wishes to know the details from the night Hannah was unalived. She believes the murderer stands with them in this very room. Yet the household shows some level of hostility to her, while she connects the dots. Lord Goddard claims he went hunting that night when Raoul tagged along. Claude claims he was in his room, and Giselle kept Charlotte company while Alfred was in the basement, doing some busboy stuff. This narrows down the options to two suspects, Claude and Alfred, but of course, Lord Goddard is not ready to accept that Claude could kill his own mother, so there's a full-blown hurricane at the table. Turns out that Aya's motive for doing this is to buy them time to find the culprit by keeping the vampires and servants on edge. Later that evening, Goody Two-Shoes keeps an eye on the attendants, while detectives follow Lord Goddard into the forest. Goddard stretches out one more time that the murderer cannot be part of his family because he has lost so much and doesn't want his family to end up like the Akatsuki clan. Just when his honorable speech ends, Goddard is shot with a stray arrow and calls quits on his peaceful pact with humans because it never said that they could attack him or his family first. Aya calls Goddard to order by saying the man is innocent of the unaliving. Matter of fact, she decides it's time to put an end to this tragic case after a question and answer session about a man named Hugo. Turns out Hugo was a hunter with a great agenda against Lord Goddard and was summoned by the murderer as a decoy. However, the next time Aya returns to the mansion, she announces that someone on this bloody table is the imposter, and she's set to expose them. Her first hypothesis draws out the sound from the murder scene. Everyone attests that Hannah was killed silently at the time, but Aya believes a sound should have been made from the intensity of driving the stake in Hannah's chest, and the only people who could have heard the sound were Claude and Alfred, who were the closest to her at that time. Aya let the duo off the hot seat on the probability that they could have cooked up fake stories if they were working together. But that is not the case. She now stands on the probability that Hannah was killed in a manner that seemed like she was doing her work as a furniture maker, ruling out the possibility that she was killed with a stake, but with a weapon of similar size as a stake and Hannah's hammer to drive it in. Ruling out that possibility is the presence of the holy water on Hannah's body at the crime scene. From Aya's investigation, the jar was empty and dusty, as if it was purposely left there as a decoy from the truth. Canceling every other hypothesis is the possibility that the only way holy water could burn Hannah's body is if the murder weapon was holy water. So the murderer froze holy water into a stake, snuck into Hannah's room while she slept, and stabbed her. The stake melted immediately from the heat and burnt her vampire body, left his bloody coat as a decoy, left the holy water bottle as a decoy, and also broke into the storage room after Lord Goddard went hunting to create another decoy with Hannah's blood and the silver stake. Aya establishes 5 conditions for one of them to be the murderer. They did not have an escort during the supposed time of the murder. It is someone that no one suspects. They had some time to move freely on their own before the supposed time of the murder. They must be strong enough to drive a stake, and they must be skilled enough to commit the murder. Narrowing down the options gives Giselle and Raoul the culprits because Lord Goddard, Claude, Charlotte, and Alfred's locations were all accounted for that night. But the one who fulfills the condition for being a skilled killer is Raoul. All facts, no printer. Before Aya concludes her speech, Raoul ambushes her birdcage, aiming for her head, but none of that is happening on Tsugaru's watch. The Oni Slayer lives up to his title by beating Raoul to a bleeding pulp, and while the Fang family is still in shock from this incident, Aya reveals Raoul never wanted the alliance with humans, so he killed his mother, just so Lord Goddard would hold resentment for humans. Before the detectives depart, Lord Goddard gives the duo a hint to their search, saying the old geezer known as the Professor visited the county some weeks ago, but later left for London. The following year in England features Lupin, a French gentleman, popular for bursting holes in the national budget and pickpocketing museums. Can't call the FBI on a man who borrows priceless jewelry home to check if it's original. What's shocking about Lupin is he never hides where his next artistic borrowing takes place, so every detective and reporter gets the thrill of finding his stealing ass. Coincidentally, the search for the old geezer brings the cage user and Goody Two-Shoes into town, which also lures Annie, a child reporter who travels without parental supervision like Dora the Explorer. Like every lousy mission the team of 2.5 pulls, they end up in the custody of the British police, along with 2 thieves and the infamous Sherlock Holmes with his dear friend, Dr. Watson. Turns out that Mr. Fogg, a famous art collector from all over the world, summoned these detectives upon the letter sent out by Lupin. For some reason, Lupin thought announcing his arrival made him a proper gentleman. It is also revealed that he has Eric, the Phantom of Opera, in cohorts. Turns out Lupin is aware of the important personnel on Fogg's invitation, yet the invitees that bother him are security agents from Royce, a special department known to be very notorious about their dealings, although they don't look like it. Soon, Fogg takes his circus to the secret vault, where Lupin's target, the penultimate jewel, which is the rarest of its kind, is kept in a silver safe, which is a natural enemy to werewolves and vampires. Holmes promises to do everything possible to keep the jewel safe, including sealing away any hole that could serve as an entrance. One fascinating factor is the professor who lurks in the shadows of England to watch the match between Lupin and Fogg unfold. Watson visits Holmes's crib the next day to get his view on the case, but on Holmes's part, the whole scenario is like an intense chess match, although anyone can classify him as one of Fogg's pawns in the game. Just then, another detective named Mycroft reveals to Watson that the man in the room is not Holmes, but Lupin, under disguise. Turns out that the cage users also experience an identity crisis when they find out that Aya's cage has been swapped by a bird brain. Being the proper gentleman he is, Lupin warns Holmes about his next move. After all, a safe lock is too small to keep him from his goal. He swiftly slides out the windows after a successful mission where Eric receives him in a carriage. They don't go ride far when they bump into a damsel in distress wearing a maid costume. Goody Two-Shoes claims she's looking for her master, and one thing Lupin cannot resist is the moving lips of a woman. Meanwhile, Aya startles the man carrying her that she ends up getting crushed by a carriage revealed to be driven by the 2 lousy thieves from before. Of course, she regenerates that instant. But it turns out the thieves have a more interesting use for Aya. No, they're not planning to give her a Grammy or Crunchyroll award. They plan to sell her to the circus for comic relief. Soon, it becomes a fast chase between the thieves, Lupin's carriage, Tsugaru, and the child detective. The thieves are eventually apprehended, however. Aya discovers that Goody Two-Shoes has been riding with the enemy, Lupin the thief. Had he known who Goody's master was, he might have controlled his joystick and adrenaline. Lupin and Tsugaru get the first dance, but after much bragging by Tsugaru, the Oni Slayer gets his buns baked by the thief. The night of the mission arrives, in the next hours, beginning with the toughest security of 111 men, including special agents, detectives, inspectors, and British police. Just when they think they have Lupin's entrances blocked by shooting the doorknobs, a loud bang rocks the safe room, signaling the entrance of water, which is the only thing these detectives never thought could go through the high-air vent roof. One of the Royce agents, Fatima, arrives at the detective's rescue, now being trapped with an immense body of water in the safe. Fatima creates a hole from the outside where the water leaks out to give Fogg and his detectives a smooth landing back down, releasing them just in time for the end of Lupin's attack. Turns out that with all their efforts, the safe box still ends up missing amidst the chaos. They return to find warmth after the near-death experience when Holmes breaks his silence on Mr. Ganimard, the last inspector to enter Fogg's safe. Holmes exposes Ganimard as Lupin with a disguise, just like when he visited his lodge. Turns out the safe was taken out when the water pressure loosened the air vent, so Lupin's partner can extract it with a rope. The major plot twist is that the diamond is no longer in the safe, as it was secretly taken by Holmes and kept in Watson's tobacco box in his coat pocket. Just when Holmes thinks he's solved the greatest mystery in London, Another major twist to the story is that the tobacco box is already with Lupin, who makes his way out of the room that same minute. Soon, every one of Fogg's men is alerted to find Lupin, but the one who finds the scoundrel first is Aya, who is revealed to be the head inside the stolen safe. And at that same minute, Tsugaru is alerted to join the party as well as Goody Two-Shoes. Aya was only able to pull this plan off because on their first encounter, Lupin is convinced that Aya is the little reporter Annie. Therefore, he didn't calculate the possibility of Aya being a severed head, and made Tsugaru lose to him purposely. Turns out there's bigger fish to fry when another Royce agent, Reynolds, declares his intention to kill Aya, Tsugaru, and all monsters present on the scene. There's also the arrival of the professor and his cosplaying team. Alistair the fake magician, Carmilla the vampire, Victor the humongosaur, Wannabe, and Jack the Ripper, not from Titanic. Meanwhile, Reynolds spreads devastating terror on the battlefield against the combo of Lupin and Tsugaru. However, Lupin manages to get away with the penultimate gem, now on the verge of falling into a new owner's grasp. Fatima goes after Eric, the Phantom Boy. Holmes, Watson, and Aya face Alistair. Goody Two-Shoes insults Carmilla's Opie supremacy, so she has to fight her. And then it's Reynolds versus Lupin versus Tsugaru on who gets the penultimate diamond. Soon, Lupin decides to call a truce with Tsugaru in the cathedral so they can deal with Reynolds together. Of course, Tsugaru plays the bait, so Lupin can strategize from above, and ends up pushing a huge piano over Reynolds' head. Over at Fatima versus Eric, it seems he'd introduced her to a vibe that made her feel competent in the fight, but the Phantom only unveils himself in the realm of music, giving Fatima something to worry about. Goody Two-Shoes goes head-to-head against the blood-sucking baddie, and what seemed to be spiraling in Goody's favor soon turns into an ugly situation when Goody gets spelled with vampire blood. Meanwhile, Holmes and Watson do things the old-fashioned way, using guns, bullets, and tricks from a fake Mysterio Alistair. In a brief gun refill, Alistair has a chit-chat with Aya, saying they seek the penultimate knight's ability to find werewolves, which they'll need to expand their organization. Just when things were getting better, I lied. There's nothing better about this situation because it only gets worse with the sudden arrival of Jack to the cathedral. Jack single-handedly rips the two Royce agents like they're expired Barbie dolls. Lupin says miss me with that BS and exits the scene with Eric. He's after the diamond and not after a visit to the ghost world. Another devastating terror is the arrival of the professor who recognizes Aya at first glance, but refuses to release her body, which turns out to be an important sample for the recreation of his demon hybridization organization. The professor speaks on how it all started with just a young man pleading to be stronger, even if it means combining him with the body of a monster. Now, this is where Tsugaru comes in, where he was selected as one of the first vessels and the only surviving one for the experiment. The others ran mad after the infusion of the Oni cells. Aya's immortal body was stolen to extract the immune cells from her body. A certain vampire was also hunted down, and it all boils down to create the perfectly blended monster, Jack the Ripoff. Jack beats up Tsugaru to a bleeding pulp, retrieves the penultimate night diamond, and signals his teammates to retreat, just in time before Goody Two-Shoes becomes vampire oatmeal. The organization baddies with the new title, as Banquet, now have the means to add a werewolf into their team, as Fogg's side declare defeat. In the ultimate run, it turns out Tsugaru went ahead to do his thing by stealing the diamond from Jack at the last minute, while Holmes declares Lupin's discreet exit from the premises like a normal thief would. The next adventure that the cage users set out on is Operation Find the Werewolves before the professor and his cosplays do. They set out to the Howling Village not sure of finding the furry balls yet in a shocking plot twist. Turns out Fogg handed the penultimate night to them to aid their search. Aya gets the liberty to recall her encounter with a werewolf about 150 years ago, when a certain lady was rounding up monsters to get her killed. They speak on the three forms known to werewolves: the human, the wolf, and the therianthrope. Each form is progressively tougher than the other, leaving the werewolf almost invincible in the eyes of the enemy. Soon they are approached by a villager named Dr. Heinemann, who seeks their help because of an ongoing incident in the village. He tells the tale of a streak in missing girls in the village. What started a year ago became a recurring incident that the girls were only found after a few days of being missing, and in the most devastating state possible. The townspeople welcome Aya with hostility, as they should. However, she promises to handle the case to find the imposter among them, if only they cooperate. The victim this time around is an 11-year-old named Louise. There's nothing special about her other than the fact that she's a wheeler in a wheelchair. Aya inspects the crime scene, which is Louise's room, and tries to draw a pattern from the footprints to the shattered glass windows which the suspect exited with to the chimney which the suspect supposedly gained entrance. She also asks specific questions, as well as requests for evidence of bite marks from recent victims. Aya believes that the attack is a pre-planned one, and the suspect is a sane person who loves to create the illusion that the attack was done by a berserk werewolf. Hence the shattered scene. She also draws the possibility this case is linked to the werewolf incident that happened in the village 1 year ago. For the worst part, Aya blatantly lets Louise's parents know that she will never be returning, and is already a maimed child being a maimed meal for a beast. Soon, the cage users visit the mayor of the town, who's lost all hopes for restoring the town, as they've been fed for the werewolves that live next door. Aya makes a stricken deal with him that if she finds the culprit in 2 days, then the mayor will provide them a means for getting into the werewolf village, using the penultimate night. The first thing Aya notices is that the culprit only attacks young women, so it's a pedophile problem, but in ancient times where there's no FBI. Aya believes the suspect's motive is something other than satiating its hunger, because of the timed, systematic, and scheduled attacks. The mayor's best bet on the suspect is the foreigners who settled in the village, but their test for werewolf syndrome came out negative. He also believes that the werewolf is not from his village because for some reason he doesn't have trust issues like Drake the artist. As a result of how fast the werewolves have evolved due to their selective breeding, silver and holy water no longer work on them, and these 4-legged furry balls have become invincible. The mayor's biggest fear is the creation of the stronger and faster ultimate wolf he calls the Kinsführer. Turns out the story of Louise, also known as the villager's guardian angel, started 8 years ago when she found the werewolves by herself. Sanut the engineer completes the tale as the one who brought a pregnant Rosa into the village after finding her in the forest 13 years ago. Later on, Rosa gave birth to her daughter Yuta, who shares a stricken resemblance with Louise. And one day, Rosa mistakenly whispers, "Hide your ears," to Louise, who exposes Yuta and her mother. The werewolf kins were burnt by Nut himself after the betrayal, bringing an end to his love story. When the cage users interrogate Alma the artist, another foreigner, Aya notices portraits of the missing girls who were drawn as a special request from their parents. Aside from that, Alma claims she has a beautiful golden wolf run past her window severally. Along the lines, Aya notices that Louise grew up as a strange child who loved to keep things to herself. While the cage users carry out their investigation, it seems their old friends from the professor's cosplay team are in town, but the first group to make their presence known are agents Alice and Kyle from Royce. Somehow Aya is able to make the two of them strike a deal with her and call it a truce. After all, the Royce agents won't be able to use the penultimate night without the right knowledge. And the next thing that happens, loud sounds from the villagers resonate the walls, revealed to come from an angry mob. The cage users arrive at the scene to see Alma literally cracking up about how her appetite has been insatiable and how delicious Louise tasted. The next thing that happens is Alma transforming into a big bad wolf, terrorizing every villager in sight. The cage users and Royce agents end up in a chase for Alma, but the only significant fight that happens is between Alma and the Oni Slayer, proving both of them a fair match in terms of strength. Unfortunately, Goody Two Shoes falls into the waterfall while saving Aya's bird brain. All facts, no printer. Later on, Suguru and Aya retreat to get the Oni Slayer's wound treated when the Royce agents accuse them of purposely letting the werewolf escape. So now that the culprit is revealed, the mayor keeps his end of the bargain by telling the detectives how to reach the wolf village. He gives them simple directions that at dawn, they'll stand at the remains of the burnt tower with the poem on the jewel facing the sun. The cage users, now a team of 1.5, travel with the Royce agents as soon as the direction is confirmed, only to be stalked by the professor's goons from afar. Meanwhile, it appears that Goody Two Shoes was rescued by a wolf and then taken to the wolf village by a girl named Nora with her 2 friends, Vera and Kaya. Vera is revealed to have trust issues and considers alerting the others of the humans' presence. But Nora knows them well enough that the wolfmen will not spare humans. As discussions go further, it is revealed that the wolf village has also been experiencing serial murders of young girls and is actively looking for the imposter among them. Goody Two Shoes tells the tale about her great master, who is a great detective, but Nora turns down the offer because she cannot trust humans, even though she saved one. Soon, they come up with a plan to help Goody Two-Shoes leave the wolf village secretly in the time of the night, which is daytime for the wolf village, as they can adapt to the darkness. Unfortunately, they're caught despite their efforts to hide the human scent, and Miss Goody Two-Shoes end up in the square in the middle of the village. Goody ends up on the same wolf trial Rosa was made to go through 13 years ago, and if found guilty, she'll be killed immediately. Vera and Kaya try helping, but there's no saving a human. The Wolf Council despises. At the same moment, the wolf folks are about to blame Miss Goody for the murders in the village. A gunshot is heard from afar, and Nora's body is found dead. The killer's scent is untraceable, yet from Goody's analysis, it seems like Nora was killed elsewhere, and the body was brought to the center of the village. The wolfmen choose to keep Goody as a hostage, despite the truth that she is innocent of the murders. In an interesting twist of events, the cage users, as well as the Royce agents, have teamed up and are close to finding the wolf village when one of the professor's goons ambushes them from above. In another interesting turn of events, turns out Victor and Aya are in close relation with each other. Matter of fact, he sensed they were in trouble and managed to save them from the pestilent Royce agents. In exchange for the save, Tsugaru shows him the real location of the werewolf village and gives him a diamond as collateral in case of wrong information. After Nora is buried, Tsugaru runs into Vera, who has been waiting on Goody's request. Vera takes them to the cell where Goody is locked. They provide her with the usual maid outfit while Aya gets intel from Goody's investigation of the place. The most striking detail is the girls confirming there's no wolf person named Alma the artist. Sadly, the wolfmen soon catch a glimpse of an odd scent from the prison, and it becomes a chase against time to catch the human's accomplice. 1.5 makes their way to the crime scene where the only thing in sight is a finely shaped rock. With proper investigation, it turns out the rock opens to a secret tunnel. Aya deduces that the wolf killings were done in an enclosed area, proving the existence of the tunnel where the wolfmen can't detect the scent of the killer. Going further, they find a trail of blood, a bloody cloth to carry the victims, and a rifle used to kill the victims. They also find a water body proving that Nora was killed in this cave and carried to the wolf village. It gets worse when a living space is found with a scribed calendar on the wall. Also, Alma's body is found dead in that same cave. This alone makes it clear that both murder cases in both villages are connected. By the time they get to the other end of the tunnel, it opens up to a secret door in the burnt tower where Rosa and her child were burnt alive. News reaching the cage users is that Louise's body has been found dead, but this doesn't come as a shock to Aya. After intense questioning of Louise's parents, they finally reveal that before Louise became the town's guardian angel, she was known as a helpless cripple and a burden to the village. They confess to abandoning her in the northern forest without her wheelchair 8 years ago. That evening, it was Yuta who saved her and brought her back to the village, and it was that same night Louise exposed Yuta's secret as a werewolf. Aya tells Louise's parents to clean their crocodile tears and give the poor girl a befitting burial. Aya believes Louise exposed Yuta that night as a strategy to gain acceptance among the villagers. In further news, the Royce have found the secret tunnel leading to the wolf village, and the professor's banquet have made their way into the wolf village. The cage users finally have Goody Two-Shoes back when Vera helps her escape. Aya asks one more question about the wolf's lifestyle, and it is revealed to her that the wolves live their lives at night, but are asleep during the day. Now that the wolfmen are aware of Vera's betrayal, Aya permits Tsugaru to chop off the heads of the furry balls that will stand in his way. Of course, the Tsugaru easily take out the aggressive wolfmen. Turns out the Royce agents are not alone on the ambush, and have carried measly villagers with them as cavalry. In no time, it becomes a full-blown fight between man and beast, while Aya and Vera visit Nora's gravesite. The professor's banquet also makes their way to the party, giving the fight a climax of Alice versus Alistair, Goody Two-Shoes versus Carmilla once more, and Victor versus Kyle, the big guns. Tsugaru comes to Victor's aid as a payback for helping him earlier. Victor reciprocates this by returning the penultimate night, but he also reveals the location of Aya's body. After a brief fight filled with chaos, Aya shows up at the square to announce the result of her investigation. She reveals the culprit to be one person disguised as Louise from the human village, also known as Nora, from the wolf village, also known as Juta, the daughter of Rosa. Aya dates it back to a year ago, when Louise was replaced by the imposter, a werewolf who shares similar features with her. Turns out, Aya figured out there was something fishy. Immediately she stepped into Louise's room, because the window was too intact for a mighty wolf to have jumped through it. The imposter Louise then staged Louise's murder and framed Alma as the killer in the human village, which is why Alma's dead body was found in the tunnels. What came as a surprise to Aya was that the same incident was happening in the wolf village, and the night Nora was killed was when Aya confirmed the identity of the culprit. The living space found in the tunnel happens to be where the real Louise was kept when imposter Louise swapped positions with her. Aya further concludes that the killer is a werewolf because Nora was killed in the tunnel that attracts light moths, yet Nora's body was clean when it was found. In this sense, only a werewolf could walk in the dark without the light moths being attracted to them. This further drives to the conclusion that since the murder took place underground, the body taken as Nora's is the real Louise, since she wasn't in the cave when Aya and Tsugaru found it. In the ultimate run, Jute, who survived the massacre by the humans, returned to the werewolf village as Nora, then later took the place of Louise, and kept on going back and forth through the tunnels to play both roles. This was possible because the two villages never interacted. The tunnel was a faster route. The people in both villages were active at opposite times of the day. Both girls lived isolated lives, and the lake at the underground lake made it possible to rinse the human scent that will be picked by werewolves. Yuta planned everything so well that Louise's corpse was used for Nora and later given to Louise's parents. Aya's confirmation of this incident happened when she visited Nora's grave with Vera and found it empty. Furthermore, Yuta confirms that she survived the fire 8 years ago at her mother's direction. She hated both villages of her mother's sad fate and formulated a plan to turn the villages against one another. Yuta further reveals that Louise was in cohorts with her plan because she was also sick of her village and parents who tried to abandon her. Now that the mystery is solved, Yuta exits the wolf village, but stopping her tracks is Tsugaru, who waits in the tunnel. He subdues her easily, because a dog is a dog, no matter what. Aya arrives and tells Tsugaru to release Aya, because it turns out that her true motive was to save the werewolf girls from the cruel fate of a breeding custom. So every girl she killed from the village turned out to be the look-alike of the girls she saved. In the end, they release Yuta to travel the world, who is also revealed to be the ultimate bred wolf, known as the Kindsführer. This marks the end of another successful mission as Tsugaru reveals the location of Aya's body parts. This brings us to the end of this recap. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Catch us live on the next video. See you soon, weebs.